And in case you haven't noticed, yesterday, September 9th, 2025, Israel struck a target in Doha, Qatar, with the intended target being um, the leaders of the Hamas organization, the political leaders, the top leaders of their organization were allegedly gathered and meeting in one place. Israel apparently, reportedly dropped 10 ordnance packages into the target location and thus liquidated, allegedly, the targets. Targets include Khaled Mashal and others. The fact that they would include him, and there are others who are, equally important, but he was long considered the top political leader of the organization, and while some people describe him as a moderate, others describe him as the person who is the main stumbling block to any kind of negotiated settlement to the ongoing war that Hamas started on October 7th, 2023. Now, why would Israel strike in Doha, Qatar, when they haven't done so until now? Well, because Israel has now gotten to the point where it has warned those people many times, saying to them, we have already eliminated the top leaders of Hamas in Gaza many, many times over. And we've gotten rid of the A-listers, we got rid of the B-listers, we got rid of the C-listers. They're all gone. They're all former Hamas people, right? Retired permanently, permanent dirt naps. And now, the people who are currently in Gaza are really just a bunch of, people with very little management experience in this particular situation. That's what you want to call it. I mean, you may as well. And they're basically, either new recruits or relatively newly assigned people. Most of them have not been in top management positions in their organization for a long time. In fact, we know that there are people in some of the most senior posts in Hamas and Gaza who have practically no experience doing their job. And that's going to make it more difficult for them to have any measure of success going forward, which is a good thing, because they should fail. They should be defeated. They should be completely destroyed. After all, they are terrorists. And no one should feel bad for them going to meet their maker. That is where they belong. If that sounds harsh to you, well, hey, FAFO. That's what they have done. That is literally what they have done. Meanwhile, the Qataris have, of course, condemned the attack on their, land, which is understandable. The Americans have said, Trump, the White House condemned the attack lightly, but said that, but at the same time said that any elimination of Hamas is a good thing. So wait, you condemn the attack, obviously because it was in Qatar, which is technically a U.S. ally, as it hosts America's largest airbase, certainly in the Middle East, if not the world. It is a massively important military airbase, yeah, and Qatar wants that airbase to stay there for credibility reasons, because if that airbase does not stay in Qatar, well, that'll look really bad for Qatar, because it'll make Qatar basically appear to be what it is. And what is it? Well, it's basically a country that hosts a bunch of terrorists and promotes terrorism through Al Jazeera. So the only saving grace that they have, if you will, is that they're an American ally that also hosts the American airbase
that is so vital in its defense against Iran.
So that is important to them.
But is it actually important for American interests? Well,
Arguable. Certainly arguable. But
what is the main
strategy of the United States here? Why would they, on the one hand, try to remain allies with Qatar, which helps them have a station against Iran, when they could just as easily move that base to some other Emirati country, which is actually friendlier to the United States? Well, partly because Qatar gets about 90% of its oil and gas revenue from an island they share with Iran, in Iran, right? Half of it is Qatari, half of it is Iranian. They share the island. And that's a significant amount of the oil and gas revenue that Qatar depends on. So the fact that Qatar has a foothold essentially on Iranian soil and is also an American ally means that there's an American ally on Iranian soil.
So it's not for nothing that this alliance exists. It is not
by accident that this alliance exists. It is not a coincidence of randomness that the U.S. is happy to keep having an ally in Qatar. It makes a lot of sense. So are Israelis actually worried about what
Qatar
has said when they publicly said, no, we weren't warned about this, we didn't know about it, and we condemn the actions? No, because we all know that Israel would never have done this attack if the U.S. didn't greenlight it, even though publicly the U.S. condemned it or whatever. That doesn't mean they didn't know about it. That doesn't mean they didn't okay it. This never would have happened without U.S. approval. It just wouldn't have. It's to suggest otherwise is patently absurd. Why? Because America has very high-tech air defenses in Qatar. It has its biggest airbase in the entire Middle East in Qatar. Do you really think they would allow Israel
to launch an attack against anything in Qatar
without knowing about it ahead of time? And if, God forbid, something like that did happen, do you think that the U.S. wouldn't shoot back even at the Israeli planes if they thought there was a potential threat, if they didn't know about something in advance, or if there's a million different reasons why it could cause significant international problems if Israel has launched such an attack without clearing it with the U.S. first. And by the way, Israel clears practically all of its significant military operations, certainly the international ones, with the U.S. first. Right? Yeah, we don't have to clear the ones internally. We're policing our own state, or dealing with terrorists in Judea, Samaria, or Gaza, because those are not really international issues. They're more like domestic issues that we're managing our own security. But even so, we do occasionally let the U.S. know when we're going to do something significant inside of Judea, Samaria, or Gaza. We let them know ahead of time. We, as an American who's also Israeli, we let ourselves know. America is informed very well by Israel about what Israel plans to do during military operations, especially international ones. Right? It's just a fact. So the U.S. knew, and they even admitted that they knew. Not even so much. I mean, admitted. It's not an admission. It's not like they're guilty or anything. Yeah, they knew, and they said that they informed Doha, Qatar, the government of Qatar, before the attack. And Qatar said they only got the information about the heads up after the explosions had happened.
So believe who you will, but there's really very little chance, it's practically zero,
that the U.S. would have allowed an attack on Qatar without actually informing Qatar at least more than moments before the actual attack. Why do I say that? Well, because the U.S., as much as it may be upset at Qatar for a number of things, still considers Qatar to be an ally, militarily and economically and politically, in some weird way. It's a complex situation, but it's true. So, in order to not piss off their ally in that area, yes, they're allies also with other countries in that area, right? They're allies with Kuwait, they're allies with the UAE, they're allies with pretty much every country in the Gulf. Why? Because oil money, obviously. Oil and oil money makes people very friendly when they're spreading wealth around to each other, right? And they can overlook political differences very easily when they're talking about hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars worth of oil spread around the world every how often. So, the U.S. had to inform its ally probably well before the attack, more than like a second before. But maybe not long enough for the Qataris to actually do anything about it. Like it might have been that they informed them, 5 minutes ahead of time, or a few minutes ahead of time, or whatever. Who knows? But they certainly informed them before the actual booms. There's just no realistic way that would have happened without that kind of a heads up. It's not feasible, because the Qataris then would have been much more outraged than they were by condemning the attack on their soil. Okay, great. If that's all they're going to say, fine, no problem. Let them condemn the attack on their soil. Any nation would condemn an attack on their soil. It's perfectly natural, perfectly understandable. Even a nation that hosts a bunch of terrorists is going to do that, and it's perfectly understandable that they would. Right? It's not a surprise to any Israeli that Qatar will defend their land and be upset that anyone would attack even terrorists on their land. We're not surprised by that. If anything, we're surprised by how light their response has been. And I mean, we're not actually surprised by it, because we knew, we knew when they made their response. This is obviously political theater. Like, it's very, very clear, very, very obvious. Yeah? This is not some surprising thing. This is exactly how the game is played. Even Jordan came out and condemned the attack on Qatar, and the UAE said this crossed all red lines, and this is bad for the peace and all this stuff. All the usual players out and said all the usual things that need to be said to, quote unquote, appease the street, the Arab street. What does that mean, to appease the Arab street? Do you know? Are you familiar with that phrase? To appease the Arab street is to say things that will calm the uneducated masses enough they won't riot. That's what that means. Where would they riot? Well, first of all, they would riot in their home countries across what is known as Araby, which is a disgusting word, but okay, across Araby. And it's not disgusting because it contains the word Arab. It's disgusting because it is a colonial word. And when I say colonial, I mean an Arab colonial word. They are in a colonizing empire and culture and civilization. If you don't understand that, learn a thing about history. So they say these things to pacify angry Muslims, right, who are rightfully angry because their Arab country got attacked. No problem, you go ahead and you have the right to be angry, and you obviously, if you're gonna go nuts, you're gonna riot probably, right? So the government of these countries doesn't want the Arab streets to riot, so they issue condemnations of the Zionist entity, Israel, right? It's funny how they can't even, like, some of them can't even say the word Israel. They're so pathetic in their political discourse. They literally can't say the word Israel. It's like they're afraid of saying it, because saying the word Israel might make it a reality. I'm standing in the reality that is Israel right now, by the way. It is a reality whether you say the word or not. So keep denying it, please. Keep denying it. It's only good for us, right? That you keep denying, you keep pretending we don't exist. Go ahead, go nuts, deny it. We're still here. We're still, kicking ass and taking initials, because we ain't got time for names. It's unbelievable, the level of arrogance and pride and the surety with which the Arab world declares itself to be supremacist or supreme or above, superior to other people. 100% they do. Yeah, and yet they, when you whoop their butt in a battle, they will then cry and whimper as though they are the greatest victims of the world, even when they're the ones who started it or when they're the ones who host those who started it. Right? So Qatar is crying like, "Oh no, you attacked our sovereign country," which I get. Again, full respect. Any country would do that. Say, "Hey, we condemn this action." But then when you cough like that because of the dust storm, when you go running to the UN Security Council and you demand to have a hearing, whoop-de-doo. When you demand that the UN Security Council have an emergency meeting, as they do like every other Wednesday, to condemn Israel for some other BS, it says a lot about you and your fighting spirit and your lack thereof. It says a lot about you and your convictions and your lack thereof. It says a lot in general about the fact that you're not strong enough in your own beliefs that you need to run to a third party like the UN Security Council to condemn Israel because you failed to defend your land, and more importantly, you've demonstrated that the only thing that comes from hosting a bunch of terrorists in your land is death and destruction. You got a bunch of dead terrorists in Qatar, and you got a building that's partly destroyed, where those terrorists were hiding, or not hiding, meeting, actually, literally not hiding, but just meeting. I mean, I guess you could say they were hiding in the sense that they weren't in Gaza, right? They flew away from there because they knew that they would be easy targets in Gaza, and that's why they went and lived their billionaire lives as long as they could in Qatar. And now they have joined the ranks of those who have fallen before them in similar ways. Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Dave, all these guys, Sheikh Yassin, you name it. They're all gone. And they went by the way of hellfire because the Israeli army, the Israeli Defense Forces, made sure that they would not go to heaven in a peaceful way. Right? Israeli Defense Forces made sure that they would go to the appropriate place in the appropriate way. Go to hell through hellfire. Because, well, of all the evil that they brought down on the world. Don't forget of the exploitative nature of these people that Israel is fighting. The Hamas, which has now been completely decimated. Listen, even if these people didn't get wiped out yesterday, even if they weren't liquidated, they know that they are on the run now. They know that they have to scatter like fleas and try to hide because Israel is bringing the ointment to get rid of them wherever they are. We don't even care if they're in Qatar. Now, you could say, well, they're never going to attack Turkey. Well, they might not bomb Turkey, but that doesn't mean they can't do something else. There could be work accidents. There could be God knows what. Any number of things can happen. When you're monkeying around with fire, like the Hamas do all the time, playing very dangerous games, accidents happen. Things happen. It's not a very safe line of work. Highly recommended if you are a stunt master. Not recommended if you're looking for safety. So when you consider that the Hamas leaders now, whichever ones of them are actually left alive, when you consider that they know that Israel is after them, regardless of where they hide. They know the jig is up. Yeah? They know they're living their best lives right now as much as they can. Those who actually are still alive and still have money, they know they're living their best lives, and it's probably not going to last because Israel is done messing around. Right? Israel is done letting these guys get off easy. We have now taken the fight to them in Gaza. We've wiped out their leadership. We've wiped out thousands or tens of thousands of their terrorists on the ground. The only really big movements left to do on the ground in Gaza are to essentially capture Gaza City and free the hostages. Right? That's because they suspect that they know where many of them are. So if they manage to actually free hostages in Gaza, it'll be amazing. And that's what everybody wants, is for the hostages to be home. And of course, people want it in different ways. Yeah, some people want it just to be negotiated settlement. Other people are saying use military force. Different schools of thought of that. I've already spoken about that many times, which is why, I'm still of the opinion that, look, it's easy for anyone who doesn't have a family member or relative or loved one who's currently being held hostage or is ever being held hostage. It's easy for us to say, oh, just use military force, or oh, just use whatever solution. But at the same time, you also have to respect the fact that there are real people being held, and their families and loved ones want them back, and they don't frankly give a shit. Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so. They don't frankly give a shit about theoretical long-term implications. They want their family members back. That's it. That's all they want, and it's completely understandable. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the entire nation has to succumb to their wish just because they don't like the particular direction of the current government. They don't like that the government, and forget whether or not they actually like the politician or not. They don't like the fact that the government is not willing to give up more to get the people back. Right? They're not willing to surrender to Hamas to get the people back. I mean, quite literally, there are people who have said Israel should surrender to Hamas. Well, that would mean that we would all get slaughtered, because that's what Hamas would do, and they say it openly. Like if we open our doors to them, hello there, I see people here. Yes. Okay. Hello. Please, can you help me? How can I help you? We're a visa? I don't know what you mean. Call the embassy that you're looking to visit the country of. You're looking for a work visa? Well, call the embassy of the country that you want to work in, is what I'm saying to you. Hello. What's your name? Yahya? Like Yahya Sinwar? Interesting. Right, so there are Israelis who actually wish that Israel would surrender. When I say many, I mean it's a tiny fraction. But even if you have 10 people thinking that in the country of 10 million, that's insane. Because, like, it's literally an insane thought. Because to surrender to a group that says we will kill you all is suicide, and Israel is not going to commit national suicide because 10 people want Israel to do that, or even 100, or even 1,000 people. Frankly, even if 1 million people wanted to do that, the government of Israel is not going to commit national suicide because of the whims of crazy people. We're just not going to do that. And there were nowhere near 1 million people in Israel who want Israel to literally surrender to Hamas. But there are some crazy idiots who have said things like that. Like, don't kid yourself, that has actually happened. Additionally, yeah, and this is also important, there are people in Israel who want Israel to commit itself to, releasing more than the current proposal of 2,500 living Arab prisoners in Israel, like Palestinian, what they call themselves Palestinian Arabs, currently in prisons in Israel. They want more than 2,500 of them to be freed in exchange for the 50 hostages, most of whom are already dead. So there's this big conflict, this big internal turmoil, this big push and pull of what what, if anything, should Israel do to get back the hostages in terms of negotiations? Should we be negotiating at all, or should we not be negotiating at all? Listen, there's this old. First of all, there's this book by Bibi Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu himself wrote it long before he was prime minister. How the West was won, right? One of the things that Bibi used to profess about, so to speak, was that you don't negotiate with terrorists because it only leads to more terrorist action. It only leads to more terrorism. And it's true. We've seen it time and time again. The more you negotiate with them, the more they just carry out the attacks again. How do we know that? Well, look at the evidence. Look at the evidence, okay? We've seen Israel negotiate with terrorists in the past. Yahya Sinwar, the brainchild, or whatever you want to call it, the mastermind, that's the word, the mastermind of the October 7th attacks, used to be a prisoner in Israel because of his terrorism activity. His life was in fact saved by Israeli doctors. Did you know that? Yeah, his life was saved. He had like brain cancer or something. Israeli doctors saved him while he was literally a prisoner in an Israeli prison. And how did he thank Israel? He thanked Israel by attacking Israel on October 7th, by leading the attack, devising the entire plan for the attack, and being the leader of Hamas on the ground in Gaza on October 7th, who led the attack against Israel. So to say that it doesn't have any negative consequences to negotiate, and by the way, how did he get free? In case you don't know, he got freed when Israel agreed to exchange more than 1,000 Palestinian terrorists for the release of Gilad Shalit. And you see, there's a difference, because the people who say they support Palestine but actually don't, they actually support terrorists against helping Palestinians actually achieve freedom, right? The people who say they support Palestine will argue that Israel has, should get its hostages back only if the Palestinian hostages are freed. The Palestinians in Israeli prisons are not hostages. They are prisoners. They have regular visits from loved ones, family, lawyers, right? They're allowed to get visits from the Red Crescent. They're allowed to, if they need to, whatever. They usually don't need to. In fact, the most violence that occurs in Israeli prisons is prisoners attacking each other. By the way, that's pretty normal in every country, but in Israel, it's particularly sadistic because the Hamas prisoners literally set up their own special kind of rules and punishments for each other, which include torturing each other to death. And they beat each other, and they do all kinds of awful things to each other. If they suspect that you are collaborating with the Israelis in any way, you're subject to these punishments, and you can easily be, beaten to the point of death, but and barely allowed to live, or you can be, handicapped very easily. You can be mutilated in God knows how many ways. And yes, people even die from it. It is a well-known fact. How do they get away with it? Well, because they're prisoners in a system, that frankly is a prison system. And in many prison systems, you will find this kind of thing happening. This is not unique to Israel by any measure, right? Like at all. It is not a uniquely Israeli thing that people in prisons will commit all kinds of brutality against other people in the same prison. That is actually a very normal thing. If you think it's not, well, I've got a bridge to sell you where you don't need one. Think about it. Is it unusual for prisoners to mistreat each other? No, it's not unusual for prisoners to mistreat each other. It's a very common thing, unfortunately. It happens all the time. It happens all too often. It happens in every prison system on earth. Yes, it also happens in Israel. Right? When the guards aren't looking, they're either unaware or maybe they're turning a blind eye. Who knows? But the fact is, there are many, many, many cases where Hamas prisoners have abused, mistreated, tortured, and even killed other Hamas prisoners. And that is just a well-documented fact. And even if you ask, I mean, look at Hassan, Musab Hassan, the Green Prince, they call him, right? Look at him. Look what he has said about life in Israeli prisons, right? He's made it very clear. Yes, life in Israeli prisons is full of abuse by Hamas against Hamas. Like he has expounded upon that at length many times about his story, about how he came up through the prison system, and he saw firsthand what they did to suspected collaborators, right? And he understood that the only reason that he probably survived certain times when he might have lightly been suspected of or was on the cusp of being suspected of collaborating with Israel, and he himself has said the only reason that he survived is because he was who he was. He is the son of one of the founders of Hamas, so they couldn't touch him. He was untouchable, essentially. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't very close to being not untouchable. In fact, his own father declared that Hamas could kill him. His own father said, sure, open hunting season on my son, which is, I mean, imagine how psychotic and sadistic you have to be as a person to say that about your own child, who all that child wants is for people not to be mass slaughtered by a terrorist group. That's all he wants. He doesn't want Hamas to kill people. That's all he wants. He wants Hamas to not continually oppress the Palestinian people and abuse their position of power in that population. He wants Hamas to be essentially non-extremist terrorists. But no, for his father, that's not enough. His father literally said, you can kill my son. If that isn't batshit crazy to you, I don't know what to tell you. Because that's pretty batshit crazy to me. That any father would ever say to an organization of terrorists, like openly, with a willing heart, yes, you may kill my son. That is just insane. That is insane. I don't even care, like, what you accuse your son of having done. That is insane. So anyway, guys, I think it's just about going to do it for now. And I will very likely catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully. See you in the next one. You sent the longer message here. Made my life not good. My parents are very sick, so I need to go to the USA to work because I need to help my parents and my little bit. Well, okay. Well, then you should call the American embassy or your own embassy. You should only call your own government and see about how you can get to America, and then call the American embassy and see how you can get a visa to go to the U.S. embassy. I am not able to give you a visa, so I'm not in the position of a U.S. embassy employee who can stamp your passport with a visa. But if you need to go to the U.S. For whatever reasons you said, then you have to get it cleared through the U.S. Embassy in your country, right? That's how that works. I don't know why you would come on a YouTube channel and expect anybody to be able to help you with that. But I mean, if I was making a video about that topic, like how to get help with the U.S. Embassy, sure, then maybe. But I'm not making a video about that right now. I'm talking about Israel having liquidated, allegedly, the top leaders of Hamas in Qatar yesterday. That is the topic of this video. Okay, and it is an incredibly important topic in terms of its relevance to the ongoing conflict between Hamas and Israel. Right, it is a vitally important event. Vitally, no pun intended there, but it is a vitally important event in the sense that Israel has now effectively decapitated the leaders of Hamas, right? Externally from Gaza, as well as internally, right? So Israel has actually cleaned house with Hamas and sent them to their maker, so to speak. right? Which maker? Well,
I guess it depends which Hamasnik you talk to,
right? But their spiritual maker up in the hell that they desire to go to, where actually, ironically, they will not be met by 72 virgins. They will be met by 72 angry Virginians who always loved Israel their whole life and had their lives cut short unexpectedly. And those 72 angry Virginians are going to take each and every one of them out back into the little shack and tallywhack them in ways that they don't feel
can never be overdone.
They're going to show them what it is to be on the receiving end of eternal revenge, which they so badly deserve. But yeah, that's just maybe that's just being coy, maybe not. But even koi fish can last a long time. And even they can contain some grains of truth. Ah, yes. So, again, word of caution to all the Hamasniks out there who think, oh, Israel has not defeated Hamas, and Hamas will live on forever and live to fight another day. Let me remind you, Israel warned the Hamas leaders outside of Gaza, said very clearly, doesn't matter where you hide, if you were responsible for this attack that happened on October 7th in any way, shape, or form, or if you're closely associated with those people when we strike at them, well, know that we're coming for you. We've given them heads ups. We've given them warnings. We've told them straight up, we're coming for you. And we mean it. It's not a joke. We're not playing around. We're not interested in stupid games. Right?
This is not
the season of the tomfoolery. This is the season of we're done messing around, giving you all the fair warning you can possibly get, and now you're going to pay the price. That's what's happened. You don't have to be sorry, and you don't have to even thank me for the information I shared with you, by the way, to you, the person, to the person looking for advice about your visa. Just go look where it's actually relevant. You could probably actually look for videos that help you with that process. I bet even in your own language, if English isn't your natural language, I bet you there's videos about it by some creators who've done exactly that video. Because I bet you whatever country you're from, if you view America or getting to America as some kind of salvation or a great opportunity, I bet you there's other people in your country who do too, and who've made videos about it at this point. Go search for it. Even search in your own language or search in English. How to get a visa to the USA, etc. I'm sure you'll find something. But anyway, folks, that is the long and short of what I have to say about in this particular stream. And I'm hoping that you all have a wonderful and peaceful day. You all stay safe, regardless of where you are and what you're doing. And stay safe and healthy and do good things. Yeah, and do good things is the key part. With your actions, do good things. I think that's going to do it. So, thanks again. Feel free to like and comment and subscribe. If you have anything, share, of course, share. Why do I ask you to do that? I ask you to do that because, it'd be nice if my words would reach more people, because I know that a lot of the times I say things that some people consider far out there, man. But if you actually look at my record, you'll find that my record is actually, pretty accurate in my ability to analyze and predict. outcomes and events, especially when it comes to certain topics in Israel, Palestine, Israel, the Arab world, and international affairs being among those topics. Also U.S. politics, but that's besides the point. Right? When it comes to this particular hot topic, my record is frankly really good. Maybe unparalleled, but certainly really good. Right up there in the top league. And so if you want to stay up to date with, very well, uh, demonstrated, accurate analysis and predictions, so to speak, about what is the likely outcome or what is the likely next series of events or future events, then by all means, do follow. And if you want other people to be informed as well,
then do me a favor, please.
And do the liking and sharing thing, because that, and subscribing thing, because that helps the algorithm tell people, hey,
these people
like this video, you might like it too. So, I think you know how to do all that. I'm just explaining that for anybody who happens to be new to YouTube. Remember, there's people born every day, right? So there's people who are born now who, were babies when YouTube started, right? Or not born now, who are first using YouTube now, who were, born, some years ago, and haven't used YouTube ever, and today is their first day using YouTube and learning about these kind of topics, right? So there's new people using YouTube every day. There's new people discovering videos like this every day, and I certainly would appreciate it if you would help spread the word a little. Just push the like button or the subscribe button or both, and share this with a friend or somebody you care about, or just share it on your social media networks. Any way you want to do it. Anyway, I'm honestly asking for you to do that for so long makes me even a little uncomfortable. So just to say thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one. Peace. Shalom.